Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 8 Part 56 based on novel. So let's start. Black light spread across the sky. Several startled gazes looked towards the ancient black symbol hovering in the sky. An astonishing undulation was spreading from it. Darkness ancestral symbol? There was no lack of sharp-eyed individuals in the area, hence, they quickly sensed the mysterious undulation. Immediately, cries spread like a ripple. Yuan Kang frowned as he stared at the darkness ancestral symbol drifting out from between Qingtan's brows. The fluctuation it gave off was indeed very similar to the darkness ancestral symbol. However, there seemed to be something amiss. The darkness ancestral symbol was not this weak. Yuan Kang's eyes flickered. A moment later, his brows raised as if he had thought of something. He muttered, "It's actually a symbol created based on the darkness ancestral symbol." Yuan Kang's eyes were extremely sharp. With just a few little clues, he was able to deduce that the darkness ancestral symbol in Qingtan's hand was not the real deal. The darkness ancestral symbol is the greatest palace treasure of the Palace of Darkness, and this ancestral symbol is almost a perfect replica. It is likely that only some old monsters in the Palace of Darkness have the ability to make it. Just who is this girl? To think that she has actually obtained such an item. Yuan Kang's eyes flickered as he continuously guessed Qingtan's identity. Could she be someone from the Palace of Darkness? Yuan Kang knitted his brows. If that was true, things become rather troublesome. The Palace of Darkness was not inferior to Yuan Gate. If he killed this girl, it was likely that the Palace of Darkness would not let the matter rest. Moreover, the fact that she had obtained this replica, darkness ancestral symbol, likely meant that her status within the Palace of Darkness was quite extraordinary. Bang bang. While Yuan Kang's expression was fluctuating, monstrous black light suddenly exploded from the darkness ancestral symbol that had flew out from between Qingtan's brows. The black light agglomerated in the air. In the end, it turned into a huge black figure that could not be seen clearly. A faint but extremely ferocious undulation spread from the figure. The enormous black figure was formed. After which, it extended its huge black hand and grabbed the large black sickle before countless pairs of eyes. The black figure stood in the sky while wielding the black sickle. Its appearance was just like a descending Grim Reaper. Wave after wave of extremely fierce ripples filled the area. A clear phoenix cry suddenly resonated across the sky. Suddenly, a pale expression surfaced on Ying Huanhuan's pretty face. However, she immediately clenched her teeth. The zither string moved as zither music resounded along with her icy cold voice. Heavenly Phoenix Zither, Divine Nirvana Tone. After Ying Huanhuan's clear voice appeared, the bright red light cluster above her suddenly emitted a soft cry that reverberated across the sky. Subsequently, a monstrous crimson flame suddenly surged out from the light cluster. In the next instant, the light cluster whizzed out. It was just like a fiery meteorite as it streaked past in the sky, and was accompanied by a destructive fluctuation that intended to engulf the far-off Yuan Kang. Wave after wave of mysterious sounds continued to spread from within the meteorite as it flew. Yuan power seemed to completely rebel due to this sound wave. Sickle of Darkness, Soul Execution. A solemn expression also flashed across Qingtan's eyes while Ying Huanhuan launched this powerful attack. Immediately, the seal formed by her hands changed and a soft cry emerged from her mouth. Qingtan's voice had barely faded when the large figure holding the black sickle took a step forward. The black sickle in the figure's hands hacked downwards at Yuan Kang from a distance. Bang! The space before it strangely distorted as the sickle swung downwards. A several hundred feet large black light directly penetrated through the void. In a flash, it was accompanied by a dark and formidable aura as it angrily rushed towards Yuan Kang. Bang bang! The attacks of the two women were unleashed almost simultaneously. Countless individuals lifted their heads and watched this scene. Intense shock was present in their eyes. They were clearly unable to imagine that Ying Huanhuan and Qingtan were actually able to unleash such frightening attacks despite their strength. Even an expert at the half-foot into profound life stage could only dodge this attack. It is really unexpected. These two girls might be young, but their techniques are already so powerful. Wu Kun lifted his head towards the sky and sighed. However, their opponent this time is Yuan Kang. That fellow has even defeated Chen Gui. Who amongst the younger generation of the Eastern Xian region can subdue him? Wu Kun looked to Su Ruo beside him when he spoke to this point. The latter did indeed appear as though she wanted to say something. Immediately, he shook his head bitterly and said, "Are you going to tell me that your big brother Lin Dong can do it?" Su Ruo's face reddened. She muttered softly but did not speak out in the end. "You should pray for that fellow to return quickly. Otherwise, this battle will be an enormous blow to his reputation once it is over. Even if he has a reasonable excuse for his absence, given the great hopes that the Dao sect disciples have placed onto him, his failure to appear will cause many to be disappointed." Wu Kun thought about it as he stared at Su Ruo and said, "It is much easier to respect a defeated person than one who refuses to even show up." Su Ruo involuntarily clenched her hand tightly when she heard this. After which, she bit her lips and reaffirmed, "Big brother Lin Dong will definitely make it. Hopefully." Wu Kun spread his hands outwards. His eyes, however, were unblinkingly focused on the sky. A split second later, his pupils shrunk a little. This was because those two extremely ferocious attacks had actually sealed off all of Yuan Kang's retreat paths. In the end, both of them smashed downwards and exploded. Yuan God Codex, Yuan God Bell. An attack that could frighten any expert at the peak of the 9 Yuan Nirvana stage finally crashed violently into Yuan Kang's body before countless pairs of eyes. However, Yuan Kang's low and sinisterly cold voice was suddenly heard at the moment of collision. Bang! A loud earth-shaking sound suddenly resounded across the sky in a deafening manner. An unusually frightening Yuan power storm formed in the sky. The sky seemed to distort at this moment. A mountain below the storm was directly shattered. The surrounding land also crumbled, as many enormous cracks emerged. Several people retreated in panic as they were afraid to be caught in the destruction. The fluctuations continued for a couple of minutes before the many shocked onlooking gazes. Only then did it gradually disperse. When the raging Yuan power storm disappeared, everyone's eyes emitted a swoosh sound as they looked towards the source of the storm in the sky. Berserk light gradually scattered from the source of the storm. Soon after, an enormous ancient bell appeared under the many watching gazes. Yuan Kang actually blocked it, such terrifying strength. The Yuan sect disciples below immediately erupted into an earth-shaking cheer when they saw the ancient bell appear. On the other hand, the Dao sect disciples were somewhat pale. All of them clearly knew that Ying Huan and Qing Tan could no longer unleash such frightening attacks again. Crack! Under the many watching gazes, a crack began to appear on the ancient bell. It swiftly extended and split apart as Yuan Kang's body once again appeared in the sky. Every gaze was fixed onto Yuan Kang. After which, many pupils slightly tightened. This was because they had discovered that a bloody wound that was half a foot long had appeared on Yuan Kang's chest. Yuan Kang has been wounded. Several shocked voices sounded in the sky when everyone saw the bloody wound on Yuan Kang's chest. These two girls were really strong. Their earlier attacks might have been blocked by Yuan Kang at the critical moment, but they still caused the latter to be injured. The hearts of Ying Huan and Qing Tan sunk a little when they saw this. They did not expect that they were still unable to obtain their desired result despite having unleashed their strongest attacks. Yuan Kang's strength was truly frightening. Ha ha, it has been many years since I was injured. Yuan Kang glanced at the wound on his chest in an indifferent manner. Soon after, he lifted his head. His eyes were a little malevolent as they stared at Ying Huan and Qing Tan. However, your performance shall now come to an end. A dark and sinister murderous aura spread from Yuan Kang's body after his voice faded. He suddenly took a step forward. His body flashed and turned into a light figure that headed straight for Ying Huan. Ying Huan's expression changed slightly when she saw Yuan Kang move. Her hand rose and fell on the zither as over a dozen sharp crimson sonic waves immediately whizzed towards the latter. Yuan Kang flicked all 10 of his fingers in the face of Ying Huan's attacks. The force directly shattered all the sonic waves, and did not slow him down at all. From the looks of it, he was already intending to finish her off. Stop! Qingtan was startled when she saw Yuan Kang attack Ying Huan. Her lovely body rushed forward. With a clench of her hand, the black sickle flew back into it. The sickle danced as it penetrated through space and swung at Yuan Kang. Get lost! Yuan Kang's expression was cold and indifferent. His hand swatted outwards as majestic Yuan power directly swept out like lightning and slammed onto Qingtan's body. Bang! Qingtan's body immediately flew backwards after being struck by this attack. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. Yuan Kang had already arrived in front of Ying Huan after sending Qingtan flying with a palm. His hand contained an aura of death as it was swung out ruthlessly. When she saw this, Ying Huan slammed her hands on the heavenly phoenix zither. The zither bounced upwards and acted like a shield as it blocked in front of her. Yuan Kang laughed coldly upon seeing this. Without dropping in speed, his palm powerfully slammed into the heavenly phoenix zither. A clear metallic sound echoed as an uncontrollable violent wind unfurled. Redness surged onto Ying Huan's pretty face, and a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. Her lovely figure shot downwards. Finally, she staggered and landed miserably on the ground. Little senior sister. The surrounding Dao sect disciples' expressions drastically changed when they saw this. In the sky, an evil glint flashed in Yuan Kang's eyes when he saw that Ying Huan had avoided his killing blow. His body flashed and descended to give chase. Although he was a little afraid of Qingtan's status, he clearly intended to kill Ying Huan. Protect little senior sister. The dozen Dao sect disciples closest to Ying Huan immediately cried out when they saw that Yuan Kang was actually planning to attack again. Very quickly, they appeared in front of Ying Huan. Their expressions were filled with fury as they watched the figure rapidly approach. Suicidal fools. A sinister smile appeared from the corners of Yuan Kang's mouth when he saw that these ordinary Dao sect disciples actually dared to block him. With a wave of his hand, majestic Yuan power swept out. Immediately, those dozen Dao sect disciples were sent flying backwards as they spat out blood, while their bones emitted cracking sounds. Ying Huan's eyes quickly turned red when she saw those Dao sect disciples spitting out blood and flying backwards. Huan, pull back. Wang Yang, who had been fighting Lei Qian in the sky for a long time, suddenly cried out. This was because he saw that Yuan Kang had once again unleashed a sharp palm wind. However, Ying Huan's Yuan power was already exhausted at this moment. She was unable to put up any defense as she watched Yuan Kang approach with a ferocious expression on his face. Yuan Kang's sharp palm wind rapidly magnified in Ying Huan's eyes. However, it was just about to land on her when Wang Yang's bloody figure suddenly rushed over. He slammed his palm onto Ying Huan's body and sent her flying. Subsequently, he also hurriedly tried to withdraw. Since you want to save her, you should pay a price for your action. An evil grin surfaced on Yuan Kang's face just as Wang Yang was just about to retreat. His hand reached out at lightning speed and caught hold of Wang Yang's arm. Immediately, his eyes darkened. A force was emitted and Wang Yang's arm quickly started to twist as the sound of cracking bones appeared. Bang! Yuan Kang's leg kicked out after breaking Wang Yang's arm, and directly sent the latter flying dozens of meters away, forming a long scar on the ground in the process. Lei Qian, finish her off. Yuan Kang spoke indifferently after sending Wang Yang flying with a kick. Yes. In the air, Lei Qian immediately gave a savage smile and nodded upon hearing this. His body moved and appeared in front of the young lady, who was blankly gazing at Wang Yang from afar. Do you still have the time to pity others? Lei Qian looked at Ying Huan, who was watching Wang Yang with teary red eyes. The corners of his mouth lifted as he curled two of his fingers. An unusually cold and sinister force pierced towards Ying Huan's snow-white throat at lightning speed. Let's see who will be able to rescue you now. Lei Qian licked his lips as he gazed at the young lady's long snow-white neck, while a perverted joy flashed in his eyes. The expressions of all the surrounding Dao sect disciples changed drastically at this moment, and their eyes turned blood red. Huan Huan. In the sky, Ying Xiaoxiao, who was being forced into a life and death situation by Ling Zhen, had a drastically altered expression when she saw this scene. A somewhat mournful screech contained a heartache-inducing distress as it rang out in the air. At such a time, you should first worry about yourself. Ling Zhen smiled indifferently before his body rushed upwards in a ghost-like manner. The foldable fan in his hand thrust out like a viper, penetrating Ying Xiaoxiao's defense and landed on her shoulder. A force spat out, and a bloody hole immediately appeared, subsequently forcing Ying Xiaoxiao to withdraw in a miserable fashion. However, Ying Xiaoxiao currently was not in the mood to pay any attention to her injuries. Despair was revealed in her eyes as she watched Lei Qian's attack descend upon the young lady who was staggering like a wilting flower. Tears gathered in her eyes. Lin Dong. Ying Xiaoxiao suddenly raised her head and shouted to the sky. Her desperate voice appeared as though she had tore her throat to shout with all her strength. It was just like a bleeding lark, and caused the eyes of countless people to be dyed red. The Dao sect disciples had already been forced to such a miserable state. Ying Xiaoxiao's shriek faded. She gazed at the still silent sky as tears finally flowed down her cheeks. She sat powerlessly collapsed into a sitting position. What face would she have to return to the Dao sect if anything happened to Ying Huan? Bang! However, an extremely deafening sonic boom rumbled across the sky just as a hopeless grey glint was revealed in Ying Xiaoxiao's eyes. Along with countless other gazes in the area, Ying Xiaoxiao lifted her eyes when this sonic boom resounded. After which, all of them saw the sudden appearance of a green light figure shuttling through the sky at an indescribable speed. The figure seemed to be surrounded with a brutal and cruel aura. Lin Dong. Ying Xiaoxiao gazed at the familiar green light figure. Her originally despairing expression immediately began to flicker. Lei Qian, be careful! Yuan Kang cried out in a deep voice. His expression sunk when he saw this sudden scene. However, his voice had just sounded, but the frighteningly fast green light figure had already charged over from afar like a meteorite. Before Lei Qian could react, a dragon fist that was flickering with green light smashed onto his chest with an extremely violent rage. Bang! A deep sound seemed to reverberate beside every person's ear. Subsequently, they saw Lei Qian's body shoot backwards with a bang. In the end, it smeared across the ground for a couple hundred of feet and violently crashed into a cliff. His entire body was embedded into it, while many large cracks began to spread. It's big brother Lin Dong. He has returned. On a mountaintop, Su Ruo watched the green light figure that had charged into the battlefield. Joy immediately surged into her eyes as she spoke in an excited manner. That fellow has really returned in time. Wu Kun was also a little shaken as he watched the green light figure that had sent Lei Qian flying with a punch. Soon after, his expression changed slightly. This was because he could sense the monstrous brutal aura being emitted from within Lin Dong's body. That brutalness was even thicker than those demons in Unique Devil region. At this moment, he could tell that this murderous god of the Dao sect seemed to be raging. Wu Kun swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was clearly aware that there was an extremely vast gap between Lin Dong and Yuan Kang, but for some reason, he still vaguely felt the Yuan Gate would come to a tragic end this time. The green light human figure who had charged into the battlefield seemed to possess a kind of magic that caused the originally chaotic battleground to immediately become much less so. All the disciples from both sides had their eyes glued to that figure. The green light on that figure's body slowly disappeared under those countless gazes. Finally, it turned into a young figure. It was Lin Dong. At this moment, Lin Dong's face was filled with a heart-chilling brutalness. He glanced at Yuan Kang from afar. Those wild beast-like eyes caused even the latter's heart to feel a slight chill in his heart. Lin Dong took a single look at Yuan Kang before turning his body around. He looked at those red eyes of the young lady, which seemed to have now lost its former liveliness. A heartache immediately surged along with a brutal murderous intent. Lin Dong trembled slightly as he extended his hand and rubbed the young lady's icy-cold cheek. An apologetic expression flashed across his eyes as he spoke in a hoarse voice, "Sorry, I am late." Lin Dong's hand touched Ying Huan's ice-cold cheek. Only then did the young lady's dull eyes focus. She simply watched the young man in front of her, whose eyes contained a brutal expression that was vaguely accompanied by a trace of tiredness from traveling at a crazy pace. Tears finally gushed out from those originally red eyes. The young lady took 2 steps forward, before she finally pounced into Lin Dong's embrace. The emotions that had been suppressed in her heart finally completely erupted at this moment. She appeared like a child as she cried in a loud, heartbreaking manner. Her cries caused one's heart to be filled with sorrow. So many seniors and juniors were killed. Wang Yang's arm was also broken, Big Sis has also been injured. Lin Dong hugged Ying Huan. His arm trembled as it stroked the young lady's long hair. This was the first time he had seen the usually smiling and contagiously lively young lady cry in such a manner since he had become acquainted with her. She had not cried even when she stayed behind alone to block the devil seal mass back then. Lin Dong hugged the young lady. After which, he slowly lifted his head. He gazed at the surrounding Dao sect disciples who were covered in injuries. At this moment, their eyes were filled with fervor as they stared at him. Moreover, their eyes did not even contain a sliver of blame for his late arrival. Junior brother Lin Dong, we are useless. We actually had to rely on little junior sister. Pang Tong wiped away the blood from his face. He sat on the ground and bitterly laughed towards Lin Dong. Subsequently, his expression became complicated as he paused. He continued, Junior brother Lin Dong, you have been creating miracles ever since you joined Dao sect, although I know that this might be making things difficult for you, but... Pang Tong suddenly stood up. After which, he knelt down towards Lin Dong with one knee. His face had a faint craziness and savageness as he stared at Lin Dong like a wounded beast grabbing onto its last hope. A low roar rang out. Please strengthen our Dao sect. The surrounding Dao sect disciples crashed to the ground as they suddenly knelt on one knee. All of their eyes were frighteningly savage. Senior brother Lin Dong, strengthen our Dao sect. The low and orderly voices of the Dao sect disciples contained a rich hatred that reverberated across the area, causing the expressions of many to change slightly. Lin Dong slowly hugged the young lady in his embrace. Soon after, he once again gently released her as her crying slowly halted. His hand reached out and very gently wiped away the tears on her face. After which, he lifted his head and looked at the Dao sect disciples. Frightening, ferocious smiles were slowly climbing up bit by bit on their young faces. I will use all of their lives to honor our dead brothers. Lin Dong's voice was not loud. However, it slowly spread about the area. The entire place seemed to have fallen into silence at this moment. Faintly, amidst a monstrous brutalness that filled the heavens, a sleeping Asura was awakening in this bloody land. A bloody scent permeated the area, while the atmosphere was a little quiet at this moment. The source of this silence was the figure of a young man who had appeared in the battlefield with a brutal aura all over him. If one was to discuss the surface strength of the owner of this figure, it would not be considered outstanding in this place where genius is gathered. However, not a single person underestimated him because of it. The various incidents from before allowed them to clearly understand just how foolish it was to underestimate him. Hence, when his not loud voice that was filled with gloom and brutality spread, the breathing of several people turned sluggish for a while. They could vaguely sense that the bloody scent in this place seemed to have become even richer. At this moment, Ying Xiaoxiao hurriedly descended from the air. She heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that nothing serious had happened to Ying Huan. Senior sister Xiaoxiao, leave everything else to me. Lin Dong slowly released the young lady in his embrace. After which, he looked towards Ying Xiaoxiao and softly said. Ying Xiaoxiao gazed at the young face before her eyes. It no longer had its usual smile. Instead, a trace of blood had climbed into his eyes. This caused him to appear exceptionally ferocious. However, this ferociousness made her to feel very much at ease when it landed in her eyes. She was also able to see a faint trace of tiredness within Lin Dong's eyes. It seemed like he had traveled at a breakneck pace during this period of time. It's going to be tough on you. Be careful. Ying Xiaoxiao pulled Ying Huan and hugged the young lady as her heart ached. After which, she stared at Lin Dong and uttered those words. Although she was aware of just how perilous the current situation was, she also clearly understood that the young man before her had seldom done anything that he was not confident of. Brother Lin Dong. Lin Dong nodded, before he turned around. After which, a lovely voice that contained some joy was transmitted over. Qingtan hurried over in a flash and appeared in front of him. Her pretty face was filled with joy. At this moment, Qingtan had already wiped off the blood from the corner of her mouth. It was likely that she did not want Lin Dong to see her injured. However, a somewhat pale little face still revealed some clues. Lin Dong stared at Qingtan's somewhat pale little face. Soon after, he extended his hand and gently patted her head. However, he did not reprimand her this time around. Nevertheless, those eyes of his, which were originally rich with ferociousness, became exceptionally frightening at this moment. Take Brother Chen Gui and move back a little. Lin Dong glanced at the injured Chen Gui nearby and said. Okay. Qingtan nodded obediently. Given her understanding of Lin Dong, she could sense the level of brutality that was churning under the latter's calm face. Yuan Kang's eyes indifferently looked at Lin Dong from afar as the latter slowly stepped forward with a body that was covered in a brutal aura. A sinisterly cold murderous intent flashed across his eyes as he spoke in an indifferent manner. I thought that you would hide until the great sect competition is over. Never did I imagine that you actually possess some guts. This place is not bad. However, Lin Dong completely ignored those mocking words. Instead, his gaze slowly swept over the vast rocky terrain. As your final resting place, it should be worthy of your status. However, Lin Dong's subsequent words caused the coldness in Yuan Kang's eyes to become even more intense as the latter slightly narrowed his eyes. Who do you think you are? This place will be more apt as a graveyard for your Dao sect disciples. That Yuan Gate spirit general, who was entangled in a fight with Qingyi earlier, laughed coldly because of Lin Dong's words. Lin Dong glanced at him. He lifted his foot and let it fall. An after-image immediately appeared on the spot he was originally at. That Yuan Gate spirit general was no pushover. His expression altered slightly when he saw that after-image. His foot stomped on the ground and his body pulled back explosively. However, his body had barely moved when the space in front of him emitted a hurried rushing wind sound. Lin Dong's body appeared in front of him in a ghost-like fashion. Without wasting any time with words, Lin Dong threw his fist forward. While Lin Dong threw his fist forward, the green dragon scales on his arm began to disappear in a strange manner. Within a short couple of breaths' time, they had seeped into his skin. A pale green color seemed to appear on Lin Dong's skin when this occurred. Many green patterns wiggled under it. If one looked carefully, one would discover that the green patterns were actually in the shape of green dragons. An astonishing strength surged as they wiggled. The speed of Lin Dong's punch was extremely quick. Even the Yuan Gate spirit general only saw a flickering green light. In the next moment, a terrifying strength had already reached his chest, and began to pour out in a wild fashion. Bang! A deep sound resounded across the sky. After which, everyone saw the ground under the Yuan Gate spirit general suddenly collapse as cracks began to spread like a spider web. The expression on that Yuan Gate spirit general's face froze at this moment. He slowly lowered his head and gazed at the indifferent face of Lin Dong before his eyes. Shock and fear swiftly gushed out from deep within his eyes. Lin Dong did not take another glance at this person. He withdrew his fist and sidestepped him. After which, he slowly walked forward. He had just taken the third step when cracks suddenly appeared on the Yuan Gate spirit general behind him. A split second later, his body exploded with a bang into a bloody fog as countless cries of shock rang out. A Yuan Gate spirit general, whose strength had reached the 9 Yuan Nirvana stage, had actually been blasted apart by a single punch from Lin Dong. The atmosphere in the area became slightly quiet. Soon after, several gasps were heard. It was likely that even an expert at the half-foot to profound life stage would have some difficulty doing something like this, right? The bloody fog spread as Lin Dong slowly walked forward. The Yuan Gate disciples hurriedly pulled back with frightened faces wherever he walked. Those originally vicious faces were now tinged with fear. Yuan Kang's expression was dark and solemn as he watched this scene. A moment later, a sinister voice finally slowly emerged from his mouth. "You are truly bold to have killed a disciple of my Yuan Gate. Looks like you are planning to drag all your Dao sect disciples to hell this time around. Don't worry, your fate will be the same as his." Lin Dong lifted his head, looked at Yuan Kang and laughed faintly. "Bastard! Your father will tear you apart today." An extremely furious roar suddenly sounded from afar after Lin Dong's voice faded. Subsequently, everyone saw Lei Qian, who had been sent flying into the cliff with a punch from Lin Dong, bursting out of the cliff. He stared at Lin Dong with incomparable fury as he lifted his head and let out a roar. Majestic Yuan power whistled out. With a clench of his hand, a flickering lightning blade appeared. His body moved and charged forward. The lightning blade in his hand contained an extremely berserk and formidable undulation as it furiously cut at Lin Dong. Its momentum was quite shocking. This was clearly Lei Qian's fully powered attack. Lin Dong lifted his head. He gazed at the sharp blade glow that flickered with lightning. The green dragon scales that originally covered his skin withdrew into his body at this moment. At a glance, it appeared as though he had removed all of his defenses. The green dragon scales might have withdrawn into Lin Dong's body, but a pale green light vaguely appeared on his skin. Many veins surfaced from under his skin. They wiggled slowly, appearing like dragons. A frightening strength was unleashed while they extended across his body. Clearly, the current Lin Dong was already becoming increasingly proficient at the green heaven materialized dragon skill, while his understanding of it grew even deeper. Although his body did not seem to be accompanied by the mighty dragon scales, an even more violent strength was contained under that plain exterior. The dragon scales had withdrawn, and Lin Dong's fist tightened. Finally, it was ferociously thrown out. Roar! Majestic green light suddenly exploded from Lin Dong's arm. Faintly, it appeared as if a deep dragon roar reverberated across the area. Soon after, everyone saw numerous green light dragons on Lin Dong's fist. With a single bare fist, he collided directly against Lei Qian's lightning blade. Bang! Thunder rumbled at the moment of impact. A circle of berserk force erupted like a ripple, causing the surrounding ground to be devastated as cracks swiftly spread. Get lost! Lin Dong's pupils had vaguely turned green at this moment. Patterns of light gathered in his pupils, and it appeared as though a green dragon was within it. A pressure that only a giant ancient dragon could possess was faintly emitted from his body. At this moment, Lin Dong was just like a giant ancient dragon with the strength to overturn the heavens. A deep cry was emitted from Lin Dong's mouth. Green light surged in a terrifying power that was as majestic as the sea caused Lei Qian's expression to change drastically. Immediately, his body violently jerked. The lightning blade had been forced out of his hand, and his figure also shot out miserably. Lei Qian was completely defeated in this head-on exchange. Lin Dong watched Lei Qian fly backwards in a miserable fashion, as a brutal aura flashed in his now green eyes. Immediately, his body transformed into a flash and strangely appeared in front of Lei Qian. Lin Dong, you dare! In the air, Ling Zhen's face immediately turned frosty when he saw that Lin Dong was about to deliver a killing blow. The foldable fan in his hand suddenly pressed onto the empty space. A majestic and sharp Yuan power condensed into the shape of a long spear that ruthlessly shot towards Lin Dong's forehead at lightning speed. The Yuan power long spear shot downwards in an explosive manner. However, just as it was about to strike Lin Dong, his left hand suddenly extended and grabbed the long spear. Yet, this did not stop him at all. His other hand immediately tightened into a fist that punched out like a thunderbolt and ruthlessly landed on Lei Qian's chest. A deep sound rang out in the air. Lei Qian's expression immediately changed drastically, as a mouthful of fresh blood was involuntarily spat out. His body pulled back in a miserable fashion, and his aura immediately became much weaker. Evidently, his injuries were not light. Gasps were once again heard in the area, while numerous shocked gazes continuously looked towards the young figure. Within a short couple of exchanges, Lin Dong had killed a Yuan Gate spirit general with a single punch and seriously wounded Little Thunder King Lei Qian despite the Little Spirit King's interference. This ability truly made everyone speechless. Many people quietly looked at each other. No wonder Lin Dong dared to utter such words. His strength had soared again over this period of time. This is going to be rather exciting. The eyes of some individuals swept towards Yuan Kang, whose expression was gradually darkening. Looks like dealing with the Dao sect disciples was not going to be as easy as they had imagined. This video will end here.